From the earliest chapters of Scripture, the Bible seeks to divide the holy from the common. If you didn't know, yesterday was spring between about 9 a.m. and 1 in the afternoon, because 9 a.m. at our house is where we turn the heat off, and 1 a.m. was when we had to turn the air conditioner on. It was very short, but now we have sunshine, we have warmth, and I hope you have a time to enjoy that today and even tomorrow. This is the weekend we also remember those who died in the service of their country. And we're thankful for that. But this is also a weekend we should remember those who have died and martyred for the faith. We're at the end of Memorial Day. Let's just give you a little idea of what's coming. We have today and next week, we're finishing up Ezekiel. And a lot of us were supposed to be gone on June 14th to Israel, but that trip was one of the things that got canceled. And then when we come back on June 21st, and one way or the other, we'll start our Hooray for Hollywood summer sermon series, where we're going to have a different movie every week. If we're meeting here, we'll show it. If we're not yet, we have a couple weeks, I'll give you the movie scene and give you the link, and you can watch it so you're prepared for the sermon, because we'll be talking about that specific scene. Well, what movies? Oh, we'll talk about Forrest Gump. We'll talk about a whole host of them. I think we have A Pursuit of Happiness, Bucket List, amongst others. We'll be talking about a scene from all those movies. This passage in Ezekiel should strike us as being very timely, especially in the weeks that we have just experienced. Reading out of Ezekiel chapter 22, if you want to look with me, I'll start with verse 23. Again, the word of the Lord came to me. This is Ezekiel speaking. Son of man, say to the land, you are a land that has not been cleansed or rained on in the day of wrath. There is a conspiracy of her princes. Within her, like a roaring lion tearing its prey, they devour people. They take treasure and precious things and make many widows within her. Her priests do violence to my law and profane my holy things. They do not distinguish between the holy and the common. They teach there is no difference between the clean and the unclean. And they shut their eyes to the keeping of my Sabbaths. So I am profaned among them. Her officials within her are like wolves tearing their prey. They shed blood and kill people to make unjust gain. Her prophets whitewash these deeds for them by false visions and lying divinations. They say, this is what the sovereign Lord says, when the Lord has not spoken. The people of the land practice extortion, and they commit robbery. They oppress the poor and needy and mistreat the foreigner, denying them justice. And I looked for someone among them who would build up the wall and stand before me in the gap on behalf of the land, so that I would not have to destroy it. But I found no one. So I will pour out my wrath on them and consume them with my fiery anger, bringing down on their own heads all that they have done, declares the sovereign Lord. Now, I apologize. Ezekiel is not the book for happy, warm feelings when you read the Bible. Ezekiel has a lot of complaints he levels at the people. The first one is this. He looks at his land and says, I got bad news. Corruption is everywhere. This could be fresh if it was written today. It's been tough in recent months. I try my best. I don't post partisan things. I try to stay away from partisan statements. Not that I'm absent of partisan sentiments. I just don't think it helps the church. I want the church to be full of Republicans. I want the church to be full of Democrats. I want the church to be full of independents. I even want some crazy libertarians running around. I want all of the mix, because I think we need the presence of Christ in every area of culture. And I just don't think partisan statements are appropriate. But let me make a statement about these last few weeks and last few months. And I'm making it because it's true of Democrats, it's true of Republicans, it's true of the leaders. And it's not a partisan issue, it's a hypocritical one. We are not in this together. When you make laws and decrees that deprive people the ability to earn a living while you continue to get paid, we are not in this together. When you have society live by a set of rules that you as a leader do not have to live to, we are not in this together. When we take from a segment of culture so other segments of culture can live well, we're not in this together. It's been hard to look at. Proclamations are made and people's lives are ruined while other people gain more money and power and notoriety. We are not in this together. I wish we were. We have leaders who sit in meetings and then make stock trades based on the information that they got before everybody else so they can once again enrich themselves. And we're not all in this together. Leadership means that you avail yourselves of the same rules, the same system, the same everything of the people you purport to lead. We live in a world that exercises power for selfish gain above all else. And when we do that, it is always immoral. And we see it today. And it's always wrong. So we live in a world where corruption abounds. We also live in a world of great confusion. Now, I've talked about those in power. Let's talk about the rest of us now. There's a phrase that we read in this passage that the prophet was condemning his people for. And it says this, they no longer distinguish between the holy and the common. We live in a world of black and white, of bad versus good, or good versus evil. This is not the dichotomy in Ezekiel. Here the difference is holy versus the common. From the earliest chapters of Scripture, the Bible seeks to divide the holy from the common. 6 days you shall work. 1 day you won't. That day's holy. You can eat of any tree in the garden except for one. The holy is always to be protected. The holy is always to be desired. The holy is always to be valued. And yet most of our lives are spent not in pursuit of the holy, but in pursuit of the common, even today. Well, what is holy in our midst? Life is holy. And we throw away life casually. I saw a governor just in the past 2 weeks when questioned about the availability and the decree that abortion clinics remain open when other things are closed. And the governor's response is, yes, it's important. Abortion is life-affirming, was the quote. It's the governor of Michigan. We throw away casually and then call it holy. And it's wrong. Marriage is holy. Notice I didn't say marriage is always easy. It's not. Nor did I say marriage is always good times. Sometimes it's not. There are bad months. There are bad weeks. There are bad days. There are bad years. Through the fault of nobody. The job that was there no longer is there. What once had money, the year the money was not there. There's always tough times. But marriage is holy. Therefore, we should value and protect it and nurture it and foster it. The home is holy. I look back at what some people would say are kind of silly things when I was growing up. One of the things, sometimes I'd be out running around and I'd come inside the house and maybe I'd have a tank top on or a baseball hat on and I'd sit at the dinner table and my mom would say, "What are you doing?" And I go, "Oh, sorry, I take the hat off." Now this was the 70s. When you took your hat off then, a bunch of hair came out. Or I'd have the tank top, I'd have to run upstairs and put on a shirt with sleeves. And I would say, "What's wrong about wearing a tank top?" And I don't know if my mom ever gave me this answer that I found satisfactory at age 13 or 14 or 12, however old I was. But I think what she was trying to do as a single mom is create some space that looked different, felt different than the rest of life. I might have understood that. We let so many things encroach the things that are truly valuable. Every now and then I hear a discussion, and the discussion goes something like this, and I'll just throw off two professions. They say, "This country's so messed up, we pay a guy $5 million for throwing a fastball, and teachers, we pay this. Why don't we value teachers more?" And I think that wholly misses the point. I have some things in my home that might have some monetary value. I'm trying to think. There's a couple of coins that I've come across through the years I've collected or been given that have some monetary value. I have a U.S. silver dollar from 1876, I think, that has some value. I have a coin from the Roman Empire. I have another coin from the Seleucid Empire, which is 2,300 years old. Those things have some value. I have some baseball cards that have value. I have a 1954 Ted Williams. I have a 56 Willie Mays that I like. I like those quite a bit. They probably have some monetary value. But yet, if the floodwaters were rising, those would not be the first things I would go to. There's some photo albums that would probably be the first things I'd go to. Family vacations, pictures of kids when they were young. I would go to those albums, and I would be sure that those got out of the house first. Because the things that we value are often not the things that have the highest price tag. And sometimes those discussions, we miss those things. We spend an awful lot of time in life even pursuing the things with the highest price tag, but not the things with the highest value. Sometimes the things with the highest price tag are quite common. But the things that have the greatest value, a good marriage, a long-lasting marriage, a peaceful home, those actually have the most value, even though you can't put a price tag on it. The marriage is holy, life is holy, our home is to be holy, our walk with God is also to be holy. Yet we spend most of our time, and sometimes the best of our time and energies elsewhere. I'm on the negative train this morning. Let me say one other thing that the prophet brought up. And he said, even the prophets, and I'll bring it to our day, sometimes even the church has been compromised, and this is always especially sad. God is saying here, look at all what's going on. I counted on my prophets to speak well. I counted on them to make a stand. I counted on them to speak right. But they were nowhere to be found. And that's always sad. Today, in many ways, the church has even been absent. We have pointed the way to all the things that they are doing. Look what they are doing that's so wrong. And sometimes a little bit of pointing might be necessary. But we've pointed at what they are doing while our homes and our marriages have suffered and declined. Parts of the church, not us, thankfully, but parts of different churches throughout the last few years have spent time and energy hiding some abuses And that makes me extraordinarily upset. We should never do that. We have made excuses for our behavior. Well, we're human, we're this, and we have not proclaimed the holy. We excuse our own sin. We excuse our own shortcomings, and then wonder why people are confused. And we live in a time where there is a gap between us and the world out there. And the gap that existed in Ezekiel's time is the gap that exists today. I think we sometimes forget Ezekiel is not speaking to the Babylonians. He's speaking to the Jews in Babylon who wanted him to start condemning what all the Babylonians are doing. And Ezekiel's saying, wait a minute, let's talk about us for a while. We should always do that. It is always very easy in the church. It's very easy for me to get up here and shake my finger at all these things that everybody else is doing. I just don't think that's a very valuable way to spend my time. It's far more valuable for me to point the finger at what I can do and the ways that I can tend to fail. So, I think it was Tuesday of this week. It could have been Wednesday. My cell phone buzzed, whatever it does, what tells me I have a text. And I picked up the text, and I hit the button, and it was a picture. It wasn't a text, it was a picture. And I couldn't figure out exactly what I was looking at. And I had to turn it a few times before I got my bearings. It was the picture of a basement wall that had caved in. And it was a cinder block wall, and all the bricks and mortar and everything else had caved into this basement, and there was this light from the outside coming into the basement because there's now no wall there. And I went, well, who is this? I first thought, oh no, someone from church. Nope, it was my brother. And it was not his house. It was where his office is. He's a family therapist. And the basement of his office is where he stores things. Has some filing cabinets and all that kind of thing. He said, I didn't notice. I got to my office, and they'd had 5 inches of rain that night. And sometimes when it gets a lot of rain, there's some water that collects over here. And his entrance is at the west end. And he says, I was in there, and I don't know why, but I opened up the door to the basement. When I opened up the door to the basement, there was 5 feet of water. So he had to cancel all his clients. He had people come. He had to pump it out. But now he's got this. The east wall of his office is basically gone in the basement. So he called me again yesterday. And I said, what's the damage? And he told me, it's a lot of damage. A lot of cost. And what does he have to do? He's got to find someone that comes out there who will repair the gap and make the breach whole. God is looking for someone in our generation, like that generation, who will stand in the gap. We might misread that. We think someone needs to speak up and tell them what they are doing wrong. That's not what Ezekiel's doing. He's looking at God's people. The world doesn't even know what holy means. We do. Or we should. My first question is, are we sacrificing the holy for the common? Are we living out an example before others? Or has our life become indistinguishable anymore? So maybe we're asking, all right, so how do I stand in the gap? How do I enter into the breach? How do I begin to repair what is broken? Well, here's the first step. You ready? Fix what you can fix. That might mean you have to have an uncomfortable conversation with a sister, a friend, and you've kind of been at odds for a while because of words that were spoken years ago, or there's a little misunderstanding, and you think that they owe you an apology, they think you owe them an apology, all that stuff. You might have to have an uncomfortable conversation. have to repair what's broken. Do whatever we can and from our part to repair what's broken. Second thing we have to do is, I would tell you, guard against further failure. Know what's holy, know what's special, know what's important, know what's vital, and set up guardrails around those things in your life. If your home, your family is most important, and if it's holy, then your decisions in life should reflect that. For years, one of the great things that happened in my gap years when I wasn't pastoring a church is I got to be Little League coach and basketball coach and soccer coach and all those kind of things. And it never ceased to amaze me how often a mom or dad would come to a game and their kid's playing and they're out in the parking lot with a cell phone in their ear, not paying a bit of attention to what's going on. If your family's most important, there should be some memories. Soak it in. Treasure each moment, even the average routine moments. We tend to value the trip and think the trip will be everything, and it never ceases to amaze me how often the little routine moments of life are the things that people remember. Guard against failure. Guard your marriage. Guard your heart. Guard your family. How do I stand in the gap? Third thing, do whatever it is that you do. God did not put you here just to drift through life. All of you have a talent, an ability that you can leverage and influence the world with. Do what you do. Could be sending a note. Could be having conversations on the phone. It could be anything. Do it to redeem, to bring redemption and recovery to people. If Ezekiel can lay on his side in the middle of a street for months on end and accomplish something for God, you have an ability as well. On a day like this, we could also be thankful for the people in the past who've stood in the gap for us. That's important to remember on this day. We remember places like Gettysburg and Antietam. And we remember Belleau Wood and Omaha Beach and Okinawa and Quezon. We're thankful for what they've done. We also remember the people in our life that made a difference. I think back in my life, the guy who took an interest in me. The pastor who at age 13 said, I want you to mow my yard this summer. And when I did, he asked me to come in and he'd show me, I don't know what connection he had. He'd show me, hey, I have a board meeting tonight. This is a church budget. I want to show it to you. Here's our agenda. Here's what I do. And would step me through that whole process at age 13. I think about the people who taught 7th grade Sunday school when I was growing up. There are 8,000 jobs in the church that I would take before I teach 7th graders. Unless you let me punch them. That's a joke, by the way. We live in sensitive times. We think of the parent who sacrificed, who stood in the gap. A single mom who worked and made sure her boys were at church. A grandparent who steps in for dad. People who said, I'm praying for you. All the people in our life who stood in the gap. Who are we standing in the gap for today? Any Christian can have people that they stand in the gap. We live in a world and the foundations are crumbling. We have torn down walls and boundaries that existed for centuries without asking the question, why are the walls there? We have taken down philosophical underpinnings without asking the question, what is the result and why? What is the foundations for these underpinnings? And now we're kind of adrift, waiting for something to take their place. All of us can be a parent who sacrificed, a grandparent who's involved, a friend who cares, a stranger who steps in. We can all be someone who stands in the gap in a world that's as broken as Ezekiel's world was. That is our task as the church.